And so we're going to go and get started with Shmoop. Is Kelsey here? Yeah, there she is. I'm like, where'd she go? So we're going to go ahead and start, and we're going to have Kelsey Olson. Go ahead and come on up. Kelsey is the representative from Shmoop, and she's going to be giving us some great information this morning. So we'll start with her. Okay?
Okay. So I have like an agenda first so we can start with. So is it one of the slides? Should be. Cool. And then if you talk loud, we can hear you just fine, or you can use the mic.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Can they hear her online? Perfect.
Is that okay?
Loud and clear. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Kelsey Olson. Some of you knew me as Kelsey Clear. I see some familiar faces. I work for Shmoop, and I have been the director of the Shmoop account for Utah for the last couple of years. And we're really excited to continue our partnership and move forward and continue to work with all of your schools and districts. I also want to introduce my colleague, L'Oreal. Let me just give a wave over there. She'll also be helping out and doing trainings and working with the sites and answering any customer service questions you might have. Today I'm just going to briefly review the programs. Some of you may be more familiar with them than others, but they've got a lot of great upgrades over the last couple of years. And then I would like to talk about some strategies on how we can make sure we are equally implementing the programs across the state and setting up some training so that everyone has an opportunity to be a part of them. So can I open up into a Shmoop window?
Mm-hmm. It's a little slow to open it.
No worries. If you could just go to schools.shmoop.com, that would be great.
Okay.
So just to kind of give you a quick overview of what we do, Shmoop is a company that started in 2007 creating learning guides that were funny for kids just for free on the internet. The world just showed up. We incorporated pop culture and humor into our content so that students were making a little bit more of an emotional connection to what they were learning, and everyone just loved it. So we got reached out to by a lot of schools and districts to make online curriculum, test prep, resources like that, and essentially it was just the snowball effect. We started creating test prep resources for the SAT, the ACT, all 33 advanced placement exams, and now we do 300 online courses, RTI, PBIS, you name it, we got it. So we have this fantastic partnership with the state where you actually have access to ACT prep for all of your students and teachers. Perfect. Something that you may not be familiar with that we've done over the last couple of years is we've actually divided our website. Shmoop.com is a free place for anybody to use any of the resources we have available to the public. But we created a separate website for those premium users like yourselves who would be accessing our paid for materials, including the ACT prep. And that is schools.shmoop.com. So it's a little bit tricky, but it's actually been a very seamless transition this year for the Utah users, because what happens when they log into shmoop.com, we kick them out and we send them over to schools.shmoop.com. And when they go to shmoop.com/Utah, it just redirects them over to schools.shmoop.com/Utah. I know I'm probably going to say it a bunch of times while I'm up here, and it's like a tongue twister, but when you have teachers and students asking, why am I on shmoop.com and I don't see anything, it's because they need to go to schools.shmoop.com, and you'll think. So I'm just going to quickly log in here and go through the basics of the ACT prep. Was that in caps? Oops. So everybody in Utah starts in the same place, schools.shmoop.com/Utah. On that page, there's a breakdown of every single school in the state. They can choose their school, and then they begin to create a login. L'Oreal and I have left a bunch of those flyers. It's also in your agenda today, and some business cards. So if you have any questions, you want an electronic copy, you want us to change something, it's available to you so you can access it that way. Everyone from the state creates a login that same way. I'm going to just quickly go through and skip that process and show you what you have access to when it comes to the ACT. So I just logged into schools.schmoop.com, and I've got this great navigation bar up here. So if I wanted to go into the test prep,
It's a little slow.
it's a little slow. Okay, that is fine. I will accommodate. You can also access it from your dashboard, which is in the, by clicking your username on the orange button. And that's where you'll see the ability to create classrooms, see your ACT curriculum, and all that great data. I'm just going to dive right into the ACT prep because it might take me a while to get there. What's special about our ACT prep is that it's completely individualized. So every single student that enters our program is going to get a unique to-do list based on the skills that they have and haven't mastered. What we ask them to do first and foremost is to take a diagnostic in every subject area. It's a small, shortened version of the actual test so that our system can get a feel for what they know and don't. And then when they study for the ACT, they're really maximizing their time on those things that they need to be mastering. So for me, it's telling me I need to work on rhetoric, skills, and organization. So it's giving me some options to do that. I can go into the review topic. I can take a drill, things like that. But what we do is we offer students that directive path, but then they can also navigate on their own. Up here is the review topics. It's a living, breathing textbook. So we have every subject in the SAT, in the ACT, and it's got videos, examples, really dynamic reading. We try not to have it to just be too much text. It's really fantastic. Then they have drills, which are smaller, concentrated question banks. And teachers love using these to create assignments and homework and things like that. So when students are reviewing a specific topic, they can hone in and just answer a couple questions there. And then here's the real bread and butter, our full-length practice exams. You have 2 sets of diagnostics and 6 full-length practice exams for the students to use. So truthfully, if they were to spend all sophomore and junior year studying for the ACT, they really shouldn't run out of any curriculum. As I mentioned before, the diagnostics are just shortened versions of the actual test. I'm going to go ahead and just click on that here. To show you this, you have all of the different breakdowns of the tests, and then what we do is we accumulate them into a score when they've taken all of those exams. And again, teachers have access to all this great material by creating a classroom, and I'll explain that a little bit later on. But anything that the student does is collected and honed into that classroom gradebook feature. Just to show you what the test, the practice test looked like, we give them a timer, but teachers can also turn that timer off if you have students that would prefer not to see it. What we do is you can go through the exam here, and we have these great features that say come back to this or I'm guessing. So as they scroll through and they're trying to use their time wisely, what they can do is always scroll down, click on that question, and it will send them right back to the top of the page. I'm going to click a few just so we can occupy some data here. I can also pause and save my progress and resume the test. That's a newer feature as well. And then what we do after they take any questions on Schmoop, whether it's a drill, a practice exam, or a diagnostic, is we provide instant feedback. So we're going to give them a breakdown of how they scored. We're going to give them a nice color-coded graph and chart so they can really see where they answered correct and incorrect by subject area. We even give them a raw score over time so they can take a look at their time management. Again, all this gets saved so they can access it later, and teachers have this available to them in the classroom features. Oh, okay. And then, of course, I get the actual answer explanations. And this is where you'll start to see our Schmoop tone come out. It's really natural language. We'll throw in a couple jokes and make it so that it's not insanely boring. But also, we tag a lot of videos and skills to these questions. So if a question really stumped a student, they can click the link and we'll send them right into the area where they can drill and hone in on practice of that subject.
Kelsey, did you ever, like when it links to a video, if the school has like internet blockers or anything like that, does anybody, if you've used program do you probably have?
That's a great question. We host everything on Schmoop. So unless they have some actual issues with like internet connectivity and bandwidth, there shouldn't be a problem. We don't host them on YouTube or anything. No. You can like search some of our videos on YouTube, but anything you see on here should stream straight from here. Great question though. So speaking of videos, a lot of the videos are embedded within the review topics. So I'll show you what those look like right now. So if I'm clicking through and I know I haven't taken geometry in years and I wanted to work on that, I can click in here and get a nice understanding of the different areas that are going to be addressed in geometry. Let's see. So if I click into these areas, just to give you an example of what our language looks like, there's a lot of videos embedded in here. We do a lot of explaining of vocabulary words, examples, pictures, so that students really have, you know, a dynamic mix of study tools. And then as I mentioned before, those drills are there. So if I wanted to now practice in that, I can click this drill bit here, or I can access it from the top. Oh. What teachers can do is they can actually set assignments for students and use these as homework, or use them as like more formative assessments and things like that. So just to give you a couple quick examples here. Something else that you can do with these is you can collect schmoints, which are Schmoop points. They don't actually mean anything, but teachers can add value to them. We have a lot of schools actually in Utah, AVID programs, who use schmoints as some kind of reward system. So if you earn 100 schmoints on ACT this month, you get a free homework pass. Or, you know, if 5 students get over 150 schmoints, we'll throw you a pizza party. Or I think over in Davis School District, someone did a really cool contest where they had like McDonald's gift cards for the top schmoint earners per month, or something cute like that. And it seems silly, but it actually helps. Okay, I didn't earn any, but I wasn't trying, you know. So then you can just see, again, we provide an explanation in text for these drills. We also provide an explanation in the video. And then again, those links are there as well for more material. So really our goal is to just provide them content that they need based around their needs and their trending progress. Does anyone have any questions on the brief overview that I've showed you so far? Cool. The next thing that I will show you is you actually have an ACT curriculum. So this is a fantastic way to implement these at, you know, the schools and at the district. So you can have an after-school Saturday class, or you can actually embed it into a part of the junior year curriculum. What we do is we provide a whole teacher guide, so that even if you don't have an ACT teacher, if you have an English teacher who might not be strong in science, we actually have written out language here so that anybody can really execute this curriculum. It comes with homework and handouts, and it's all embedded with the ACT prep. So again, if you wanted to just hone in on English, you can just take the English section. If you wanted to do a 6-week course, you can use the course planner, and we'll structure a 6-week course for you. It's pretty foolproof, and it's really a useful tool to take it to the next level, because a lot of teachers aren't going to embed ACT prep necessarily into their day-to-day curriculum. We give them ways to do it, but sometimes it doesn't always work. So this is a great tool to use as a school to come up with some other initiative and way to use it. Just to give you an example here, I'll show you one of the lessons. So it's broken down, and it'll give you a lesson for every one of these topic areas, and then it gives you a homework, and you can actually see it's begin teacher perspective, and it actually gives you a written out almost script to teach that for the day. So that's one of the things you have access to. There's another resource that is new to the ACT license. It's an ACT crash course. So essentially it takes the entire ACT test prep and puts it into an online course. So every single review topic is now a reading, and every drill is a quiz, and every assessment becomes the practice exam. So it just depends on what format, what kind of devices you have. But you have 3 different options to implement the ACT prep that way. Since we're kind of short on time, I'm not going to go through that. But again, my contact information is back there. L'Oreal is more local. We're happy to walk you through and discuss these programs further and how they can be best used at the sites. In addition, we also have this gradebook feature that really is fantastic. We've added so many new bells and whistles so that teachers can really make the classroom their own. They can lock practice exams. They can use them as pre and post tests. We have item analysis so they can really hone in on why did all of my students answer B for this question and they answered a C. They can really do a lot of, reteaching and analysis from the gradebook feature. But I would like to move into talking about what we would like to do in training. So in our agenda, I can actually go back to that really fast. Is that? Oh, I'll let you do that. So the state paid for 20 trainings per calendar year. And so we'd like to use them extremely effectively this year going forward. So what Jared and I had spoke about is doing regionally based trainings where we kind of have, maybe some of you attended our symposium that we did 2 years ago in Salt Lake. But we'd like to kind of do these regional symposiums where teachers can come for the day and do a SHMOOP workshop, really dive into the programs, how to create classrooms, how to incorporate it into their curriculums, have a little lunch, do what we need to do, and it be more of a PD day than just setting up individual trainings at sites across the state. So I'm not sure if you're able to click on it, but there's a Google form in there that I would love if you could fill out for me. This way you can give us some ideas on what times during the year and locations would be best for you so that when Jared and I are working to make that, make those dates happen, we can actually have some data from you to make sure it's serving all of your schools. Are you able to click on it? Can anybody give me a yes or absolutely not?
Kelsey, what is your email?
Kelsey@shmoop.com.
Thank you.
Yep. KELSEY@SHMOOP.com. And I've left some business cards in the back. Definitely feel free to email me and we can talk about these things further. We're also able to do unlimited web demos. We do that all the time. L'Oreal always working with teachers. We're more than happy to do that. So it looks like I'm running out of time. I know that was just a quick overview. I really just wanted to introduce myself and mention that we're going forward to plan these trainings across the state. Does anyone have any questions for me? Awesome. Well, I look forward to meeting all of you, hopefully in a more personal environment. And again, our contact information is in the back. And if there's anything else you need from SHMOOP, we are always happy to help.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Thanks.
Make sure you make use of this. This is a great program, and it's free for everyone. Well, it's not free for us, but it's free to you in the state to be able to use this year.
You can use the mic or you can use your teacher voice.
Oh,
As long as you use your teacher voice, just stay close to this computer.
okay. Basically, we're highlighting the fact that we're doing our stage systems training. And if you are a new assessment director or you have some people in your building who are going to be working closely with SAGE, this would be a fantastic workshop for you to attend. We changed the location when I click the slide here. Oh, then I'll just talk on this. Okay.
Turn it on.
Better?
Okay.
Can you hear me? Oh, there it is. Okay, all right. We changed the location. It was originally going to be here in the boardroom, but we have enough. We had too many people show up, so we changed the location to the Murray School District office.
Hold the mic down a little farther.
The Murray School District office. You can register OnTrack. The number is on the code. If you have trouble registering for OnTrack, especially if you're new, sometimes you don't know how to do that, please email Emily Sweeten, and she can help you, or you can email me, and I will happily hand the list of who can register to Emily, and she will register you into OnTrack. It will be an all-day training. We're going to be doing an in-depth training of all the state systems, including, by the way, we're going to talk about benchmarks. So if some of you are curious about benchmarks or would like to send some people,
because they don't know a lot about the new airways benchmark system, it would be a great day, even if you are a more experienced person, and that would be really great. Now, this is a train the trainer workshop. It will be all day, and we are not recording it. So it will be from 9 until 3 in the Murray School District office. So we need please make sure.
And they can get the slides, so trainers can get the slides and use
Yes.
them with their.
They
So
will
it'd be
get the
helpful if
slides,
you
yes.
said, if you can't come, if you send someone, at least you can get the information.
Absolutely. And then the following day is the webinar for everyone. There will be a 2-hour webinar from 1 to 3, basically just highlighting the new tide, basically the new tide system. As you know, it's completely been revamped. And any in-depth questions that you might have as we get ready to hit the safe summative testing system. Anybody have any questions for me? Yes?
Is the February 1st going to be recorded?
Yeah, it will be recorded. We will post it. It's going to be a webinar. We'll post it on the website. It's the usual thing for experienced ADs. And we will be tracking questions and all of that. So if you have any other information. Anybody else? Fantastic. Terry, you're up. Terry?
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Okay. So my name is Terry Southam. With some changing of roles, I am now the systems person for UTIPS, not the content systems. We have made a change with our help desk, and this is our new help desk email. When you log into UTIPS, it does send a notification right off of this change, but we also wanted to let all organizations know that we have updated this. Now, the next thing that we need to do is our previous help desk had all of the roles of who our
So like if I don't run the straightener through it, if I just blow dry my hair, it would just be frizzy and white.
now. And so we need you to send a new list for each district of who your UTIPS person coordinator is. We are in good shape with our UTREX semester and trimester classes. They are now updating. We had kind of some snags, but I think we've worked through that. If you see that classes are not being updated or students are not showing up, the manual feature is still available, so they can be manually added. And then just a reminder right now that UTREX does go down still in October, December, and July. And so once it goes down, any student that comes in during that downtime, you will have to manually add them until UTREX comes back on. And then also be aware that when it does come back on, if you haven't restarted your data upload, that it will just sit there and wait for you. So just be mindful of that one. Okay, I think that was it. We've got contact information on the next slide. So my email, and then Kim Bradke is still our content person for UTIPS. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So hopefully all of you have received your materials by now, and we want to apologize for the delay with receiving materials. We had an issue with our pre-ID upload and making sure the formatting was okay, and that put the materials ordering back. So hopefully you're all okay now with the window, and our testing window goes until March 10th. It's the final day for testing, so make sure that you are getting your students tested, making sure that your technology is running. We do have an issue with the technology last week. DRC put an email to everybody that it was down. The problem was we had 10 states that started testing last week, so it was a big influx of students. They had prepared for that and had additional servers ready, but there was an issue with routing students or tests to the additional servers. So they've got that fixed, and it should be running smoothly. Right, and then so March 10th is the deadline, and then all materials need to be shipped back by March 24th. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was the WIDA screener, the online screener. So next year, starting in the 2017-18 school year, we will no longer be supporting the WAPT screener. So everyone will need to switch over to using the WIDA online screener. There's information on the WIDA website. This picture is hot linked. You can go right to that information. There are webinars. The next slide shows dates for webinars if you're interested in learning more about the screener. And then we'll also be providing training across the state the end of March if you're interested in all-day training. For anyone who would be a test administrator for the screener, it's really similar to the WIDA Access test. It uses the same platform. The difference is that instead of sending our speaking and our writing scores to DRC for them to score, the screener, the test administrator would score it right there. So there's a rubric that they have to follow. Joellen?
Do they have to, does the test administrator have to be certified to do this piece?
So the test administrator have to be certified to administer the online screener? Yes. So the test administrator, which is the same with the WAPT, currently whoever's administering the WAPT would need to go through the training because they're doing scoring right then to determine whether the student is language limited to English proficient or not. So the training they can do is online. I think it's about 2 to 3 hours to do the training. There are video modules that you work through. It's really similar to the training that a test administrator does to administer the Access test because it uses the same platform. The difference is it's more in-depth with the scoring part, so they know how to score the speaking and the writing part that is scored by DRC on the Access test. So we'll have more in-person training, but if you're interested in learning more in like a 1-hour webinar, the dates are listed here through DRC, and an hour training will be the end of March. It's like the 29th, 30th, and 31st, and I'll make sure I'll get out the dates and everything to you as soon as we have those locked down.
And this webinar is the same?
This webinar is an hour long, so it gives you more information about what the screener is.
But it's the same each of those times?
Yes, yeah, those aren't different. So each of these dates is the same. You don't have to go to each one. It's not a series. It's the same thing will be repeated.
So if I do this, do I still need to be online training?
If you do this, the all-day training will be more of an actual training for you if you're going to be administering. This will be more information about what the assessment is. So if you are a test administrator, would probably want to do the all-day. If you're someone who is looking at learning more about the assessment but not necessarily going to be scoring the assessment, you wouldn't necessarily need to come to the all-day training.
There's a question online from Tony in San Juan. Why do we open the WIDA window before the materials are scheduled to arrive?
So the question from San Juan, why do we open the WIDA window before the materials are scheduled to arrive? Typically we don't. Typically the materials come before the window opens, but with our delay with the pre-ID upload, that set our materials back because they had to print all the labels, the pre-ID labels. And so it set our materials arrival date after the opening of the window. We wanted to keep the window open on the 9th because most of the tests can, first grade through 11th grade, test online. And so the only materials that you would have needed for those first couple of days were a TAM, which you can download online. And so for our larger districts, especially who had already scheduled to start testing on the 9th, we wanted to keep the window open on the 9th because they didn't need all of their materials right then to start testing. So that was the reason for that. But typically, the materials come before the testing window opens. Any other questions?
Let's see. You also needed the script, which didn't arrive by the 9th.
The script for the TAM is something that they could have downloaded. Is that the script that he's talking about?
That's all she wrote.
Not sure.
Okay.
The script. Oh, okay.
Oh,
The script isn't in the TAM. It is a separate document. Also needed the writing booklets for younger grades.
right. So the writing booklets didn't arrive, and the younger grades needed writing, but you have to administer the reading and the listening assessments before you can do writing. And the recommendation is that you do no more than one domain per day. So they should not have started the writing the first day or two.
Just if San Juan has issues and needs an extra day or two on the other end, I'm sure we'd be.
Okay, yeah, so if San Juan has some issues, then we need to work with them. Make sure you contact me. I'd be happy to communicate with them. Terry,
Should have been.
the script should have been in with all the books.
Yeah, they send all the order forms down in the script, all in the same package, so they may need to check the feed on the order.
Other questions on the
How's it going for everybody? Are you doing okay with the
testing lines? We're here, okay.
Okay, another question.
Okay, any questions?
From Travis and Kane. If we have new students move in to do online, what is the process of adding them to testing?
Okay, so the question is that they have new students who move in during the testing window, what's the process for adding them to testing? The first is to make sure that they haven't already tested in their district that they're coming from, so we don't want to have students double assessed because we didn't have their information from the previous district. So making sure that they have not started testing already would be the first thing. If it's a student that has not started testing, then in the WIDA AMS website, there's an add student button that you go in and fill in the information when you add the student, and then you can put them into a test session. Is that it? And you're always, I would be happy to answer questions if you have any other questions or concerns.
What we came up was parents wanting to offer kids out of WIDA. Is that something that apparently is not the same process that you use for opting out of the kids?
Repeat the question.
I believe that it's on our opt-out form. WIDA is.
Right, so I know it's on the opt-out, but the actual process of when you want to opt out electronically within the system, how to get them out of it. I don't know if it's been a problem. I haven't quite understood how to.
Yeah, you know,
Gotta
I
get 'em out of
think,
the
yeah, there may not be a code for that.
And if you can, Rose,
This
do
is
not
a
select
place
for
where
that.
the federal requires it, because that is with the state.
Right.
Right, and so, I think we can work on that on the back end. And make sure, so, if you let us know who those students are. we can work with them. Oh, okay, good.
The question was about opting out, and if we have a student that opts out, which is, this one is an interesting one because it's in conflict with federally required to assess students, but then in Utah, the access test is part of the opt-out form, so
But I don't know
students,
if there's an actual way to opt out.
but as far as opting out I think what we do is on the back end, we add it to our do not score codes, but I think those students, if they've been put into the AMS system, they're in the AMS system, but I'm not sure how you mark in the system that those students opted out. Let me look into that and I'll get back with you. Okay? And that's it. Harry. Right, no, Tracy.
Okay, quick DLM update. So our testing window is coming up here, March 15th to June 9th. Any of your students that are taking DLM, you need to make sure that you download the new KITE platform onto your student computers that they're testing on. So you'll need to take off the old one from last year and download the new one. If you have not done this, teachers and students can't even get in and work on practice tests right now. So make sure you get that updated. And I just screenshotted for you on the main DLM web page that if you go under KITE Suite, you can find all the requirements and the download information there for you. So the other thing you need to do is we're kind of rolling into that testing window. Make sure your students taking the alternate assessment DLM and UR marked 1% in your system. You need to have teachers kind of start looking at rosters, making sure that they are seeing all of their students on both an ELA and math roster. And if you are finding that rosters don't look correct, you're missing students or they're rostered to a different teacher, please contact David or I. We're the only ones that can go in and override a roster.
I have put together a little flow chart that Kim passed out a hard copy to you that you can give to your teachers. It's just kind of a step-by-step, what do I need to do in my teacher account to get ready to administer the DLM, and what steps and things do I need to do in the student account in order for testlets to be delivered, so that when the window opens, teachers can start administering testlets. Let me know if you have any questions, and hopefully we'll get these flow charts up on the website under the special education assessment page as soon as possible. And then just a reminder, our early literacy alternate assessments, so our DIBELS alternate for our kiddos, the middle of the year window closes at the end of the month. I've had a few phone calls regarding what do I do if my teacher didn't administer the alternate at the beginning of the year. Please contact me if that is the case. We still would like you to do a middle and end year. We just have a way for you to kind of adjust that scoring to do that. So on the PowerPoint, there's just some links for resources and where to go to get those rubrics if need be. And so we were looking at the rubrics based off the essential elements for your students with significant cognitive disabilities. So this would also be your same kiddos that take DLM or UOC. So they're still required to take this DIBELS alternate this year. And then, next one, and then any kiddo that may not be eligible for the DIBELS alternate off that rubric based off the essential elements, but still cannot access the regular DIBELS, Jennifer Thronston or Sarah Woodkey would be contacts for those alternate assessments too. Just kind of a reminder. That should be it. Any questions? Thank you. Off DLM quiet.
All right. So just a reminder for the 2017 dates for ACT. And then I've also included the dates we have for 2018. I've received requests for those, and we finally have those. There they are. If you have questions, you can let me know, but not a lot we can do as far as changing those. So we have the makeup dates. We have two as we do this year, and then the initial test date. You can go to the next slide. So just a reminder today, at 12:30, we have ACT training. It's focused on these things that are on the slide. This is their agenda. It will also be in webinar form. So if you have people that you would like to listen in to this, please have them join. They can sign up through OnTrack, but they don't have to sign up. They can just click on this link and go to the webinar and listen in. A few things to keep in mind. So we posted, collected from Utrecht's student information that we then posted to the PANEX system, the ACT system. As we found out, there were several schools that, for whatever reason, didn't have students being sent into Utrecht. So when that file was created, those students were missing. So you may have heard, you may have schools that don't have students being shown in the PANEX system. We've come up with a solution to fix that. What we would like to do, it's not on here because I was just trying to figure it out actually this morning. So if you have schools that have said, wait a second, we don't have any students in the PANEX system, we're supposed to review and kind of check things, but no one's showing up. What I need you to do is make sure that your SIS is being sent to Utrecht. And so I'm going to give you the deadline of this next Monday. Make sure that's happening. And then following that, we will, Tuesday morning, we will rerun that for the schools that need us to. We're not going to do it statewide. So if you will let me, Jared Wright at schools.utah.gov know which schools you have that are missing a large majority of their students or all of their students, then we will make sure those are rerun for your schools to make sure the students get into the system. And it should be ready to go that Tuesday. You should be able to see that. I've received a few requests already, and I've made note, but there's that. There's also, within the PANext system, the chance you're going to review, and it says up here, so you go into the system, you review your students, make sure they're all in there. You're going to check there are some districts and charter schools that are doing online testing. We have set, as a state, we set it to default to the paper pencil, just because we figured most schools are going to do that. If you have students that are going to do online, you have to go in and set that individually. If you're a district or a school and you have a lot of students, that could take a large amount of time. So you can let us know if you're missing students, but also let us know if you're testing online and you want us to switch that, then we can rerun that again and make sure it's switched to online. Otherwise, if you're doing paper and pencil, you don't have to worry about it. It's already set for you. Every student's already set that way. It's only if you're doing online testing for ACT. You have the window, so there's a window until the 26th to review these students. There's a window that starts the 27th to February 22nd or March 8th for online. I asked ACT why the two windows, what's that about? For the first window, that's to make sure students have the barcode and it's all set up that way. You can see there that's the enrollment counts barcode labels. For the second window, if you have students transferring in, you need to add students. That's when you can do it. The students will still be in the system. They just won't have barcode labels shipped to you for those students. And you can add students as they come in. You can get into the PANext system. You can add students as they move into your district or your schools and be able to add them. If you need help with that, again, you can contact me and I can help you with that. Yeah.
Tony from San Juan says, San Juan will administer ACT online, so please switch them.
Okay, thank you, Tony. I'll get that written down. And then also just a reminder, test administration Q&A. So if you have questions, if schools have questions, there's opportunity February 10th to ask those to ACT and get answers. That should be sent out today. ACT will make you register for it to be able to join. And so make sure whoever you need to be involved is involved that way. And also, and then at the bottom, schedule of events. Make sure you're reviewing that. Next slide. Do you have any questions here? Yeah. Another question online?
This is from Darlene and Logan. Will they do another upload as we get closer to the poll in students that have recently registered, or we will need to enter them? Will we need to enter them?
Oh, the LEAs will enter them. So we're making the deadline the 23rd to do kind of the mass thing. As you have students come in individually or a couple at a time, then you would enter those into the PANext system. And like I said, I'd be glad to help you go through that. Then I was watching a video on managing students. This talks to you about how to enter these newly moved in students. But there is a part that I wanted to make sure you're not confused with, it talks about state use questions. We don't have any. You're not going to even need to worry about that. If that comes up and you start to wonder about it, we don't do that. Next slide. Whitney? Yeah.
From Canyons, it says only online ACT. Paper is the same old, same old.
I'm not sure I understand the question. all students need to be entered into the PANIX system. That's how ACT is going to determine the materials that will be sent and the enrollment. So online and paper pencil, you need to enter students into the online PANIX system.
Thanks. Hi, good morning. Again, I'm Whitney Phillips, Chief Privacy Officer. I have a little bit of a standing slot here at the Assessment Directors meeting because many of you are interested in this topic or you need to know because you have some work to do because you also serve as the Student Data Privacy Officer for your LEA. Today I wanted to talk about bad fuzzy graphics behind us. What we're focusing on with student data privacy is kind of three main goals and three focuses. We have the systems that are in place. This is more the hardware, the software, the IT support, things that I am more weak on. This is an area that I'm not as firm on. That's why I rely heavily on the staff here and LEA IT directors for help on how to secure these types of networks. You should hear me trying to speak to them. It's like a foreign language, but that is certainly one of the focuses that we have. Another is on training. Some folks think that because we have HB 358 state legislation, that's what we need to do. We need to legislate, and all of a sudden, big changes will happen. And that might be true, but how is that helping the LEAs? How is that, having these rules in place is simply not enough. We need to have significant training that trickles down to the teacher level. We are working on developing those training materials. In March, we have 2 training videos that are coming out that you can share with your LEAs. So training is very important to us. And you'll see later on we have a webinar scheduled for February 1st. We have that scheduled from 10 to 11. We will have the link for you. Actually, I have the link. I still don't have it in this slide, but we will send that out to you this week. And then the other portion of this is policy. When there is a complaint on FERPA, they're going to come to us, they're going to come to you, the feds, and they're going to say, okay, are your systems secure? Do you have training in place? And show us your policies. This is what PTAC, the group, maybe some of you went to that training December 1st. PTAC, the Privacy Technical Assistance Center, is the arm, the training arm of the feds on FERPA. And they say when we have a problem, we go to the LEA, the school, the state, and say, what do your systems look like? What does your training look like? And where are your policies? And so those are the 3 things that we're focusing on. I wanted to let you know about a few resources. Some of you might be familiar with these resources. The first one we have here is our own website. By the end of today, the website's going to look very different than it did earlier this morning. It's in staging now. It's about to go live. We put up about, 12 to 15 resources for you. And they include things like guidance for teachers on selecting an educational app, model terms and conditions. Just on Friday, the state board here approved our own standard terms and conditions when working with vendors, what that should look like as an attachment. That just got approved on Friday. It's now going to be up on this website. We are showing and sharing this with you, saying this is what the state approved. This may be something you might want to model your terms and conditions after. We're trying to share as much as we can. That's on there. We also have a data governance checklist. that's very useful. I'm trying to think of all of the resources available. We have best practices for transparency. We have what to do in the case of a data breach. A lot of information here to help you as a student data privacy officer or just an assessment director that may want to be aware of this and maybe nudge the student data privacy officer to get this going. So again, that's our website. You can check it now. It'll look like bare bones. You'll check it by the end of today. It'll look a lot better. And then, like I mentioned before, PTAC. PTAC, how many of you in here went to the PTAC training December 1st? Okay, so about a third in the room. We have, this is their website. You know, their materials and their videos are fantastic. Their website is not as fantastic. It's not as easy to navigate. But what's in there is good. I think we'd rather have that, right? So has any of you taken a look at the website since attending the training? Yes. Have you found it to be useful?
I'm building kind of rolling my own district Canvas course based on the resources that are available so that I can do security and privacy training.
Oh, and we're talking after, aren't we? So that's fantastic. So you're already hitting the ground running and developing material.
In order to satisfy the digital learning and technology grant requirements, districts had to address security, and they had to speak to how they were going to implement and train people on security. That was one of the requirements of the grant. And so our focus is on Canvas, so I said one of the things I would do is pilot a data security and training for my district using Canvas.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Just in case you didn't hear that on online, the Digital Teaching and Learning Grant, I don't know if you saw the stack of applications there. Sarah Young's been working on that, and it's probably safe to say that the LEAs didn't know what they were getting into when they were filling out this application. But the good side of that is that they had to revisit their security policies and their training policies, and that's something they're going to have to do and have in place by July 1st anyway. So I think they're going to be ahead of the game, even though right now they might not be too happy with it. Those resources I just wanted to share with you. The web link for the webinar on February 1st from 10 to 11 will be sent out. It'll be a short presentation. There'll be a lot of Q&A. And I wanted to go, I don't know how much time, we're pretty early today, aren't we? I wanted to review again some of the requirements that we have. I wanted to remind you of the to-do list. This was presented in the last AD meeting, I think in November. We didn't have one in December. LEAs need to create your student privacy officer. That's many of you in the room. The state did too, and that's me. So everyone needs to determine one. Right now I have a list of 146 individuals that say that they are their district, their LEA student data privacy officer, but I know I don't have all of you. The next one is to develop a data governance plan. We'll talk about that in the next slide. And the other one is a metadata dictionary, and I'll talk about that next slide. So data governance plan, this is an overarching plan of your policy. That's part of your policy needs to include policies on security for your systems and your training. Sound familiar? And it sounds like each LEA needs to have a policy on what they're going to do with a data breach, what do you do, and a number of other things you can read on your own time. But the requirement here with HB 358 is to have your policy posted to your website by July 1st of this year, 2017. And so that's why we have at least posted a few policy checklists on the website by the end of today. You'll have that. Yes?
You said you're doing policy checklists. Do you have like a sample policy that we can look at?
modifiers offer, or is it just the checklist?
Right now, it's just the checklist. We have scheduled for February to have a model policy. I think the last AD meeting, I mentioned that in Arizona, I worked with Health and Nutrition Services. That would be child, I don't know what you call it here. But we had a sample policy go out. And when we reviewed those policies a few years later, some of them didn't even take the time to change your school name here. And so we want to provide a model policy, but perhaps with some options so that it's a true reflection of what you want, not just a print it off and there's our policy kind of thing. So, but yes, we plan on having one in February. Right now, at least you have a checklist to go through that will meet the requirements. Okay, the next one, the metadata dictionary. We're about done selecting a vendor for this project, and we've decided instead of making the state's metadata dictionary very robust with bells and whistles, that we decide to keep it very simple and allow the capacity for LEAs to upload information into our metadata dictionary. So therefore, Granite, Alpine, all the charter schools, you do not need to develop your own metadata dictionary. We're trying to do it for you to make your life easier. That will be, actually it's on schedule. We're on schedule for that development, which is number one, hiring the vendor, which is going as scheduled. So we're happy about that.
Whitney?
Yes.
So you're saying that state level metadata dictionary will have identifiers as to which district or charter has that particular data, so it'll be one database?
No, we will have, that's a good question. We don't know what you have. We are going to say what we have and outline that, and then we're going to give you, and it's still in development, we're going to give you some kind of Excel sheet with certain columns that you're going to have to manually plug. This is my vision now, manually put in, that we can upload to where we can look at it by LEA. And what's going to happen is we're going to try to get the tool out sooner. This will be a process, as it is at the state level, to go through all of your data. It will be an auditing process. And I think the process will actually be just as valuable as the end product, because it's going to have us really think through, are these data necessary? Are they optional? Who are they going to? And I think it'll be very useful in any sort of data breach to know exactly what data vendors have. And maybe to rethink, do we really need to send all of these data to this third party, or can we parse it down? So does that answer your question? Okay, next. Oh, that's all. If you have any questions, contact me. Again, webinar February 1st, and resources will be on the website by the end of today. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. I'm just going to give you a quick update on the RFP and the kindergarten assessment. So the RFP, we're in the final stages of review and adding the edits from all the constituents who have looked at it. It's at legal right now in our office, so hopefully within the next couple of weeks it will be posted. It will be out for 6 weeks, and then we'll do the whole evaluation. And then vendors will come and show us their product, and then the selection will take place sometime. Negotiations this summer, hopefully we'll have a vendor in place and contract finalized in the fall. As far as kindergarten, it went to the board for information, or they want more information back, so they didn't really weigh in one way or the other. They didn't mandate anything. They didn't say that, yes, we're going to do this wholeheartedly. They want more information, and they kind of want to see what happens in legislation, too. So we'll keep you posted each month on what's going on with kindergarten. We're still moving forward with it as far as getting a test finalized, but the board hasn't mandated anything at this point. So any questions on either one of those?
Well, you guys are going to be rewarded for actually showing up today because I'm going to let you out early, right? With the snow, it's the first snow day. Yeah, there you go. So as Julie said, we had, how many did we have? 35 or 40 of you that came and actually signed the non-disclosures and read the RFP. And we have incorporated your comments to the RFP. So I think it's probably one of the best that we've seen in a really long time, and we really appreciate your input and being able to do that with you and for you. And like Julie said, that process is now going through our legal department, and hopefully within the next few weeks, the RFP for the new assessment system will be posted. So, Emily, do you want to go to the next slide? Also, with the kindergarten, what Julie is referring to is that there has been a proposal, and of course, you know, we're starting the legislative session. It starts Monday, I believe, the legislative session does. Goes for 45 days. We're going to tick those off as we go. And we'll have lots of legislative updates throughout the session. And one of the things that they're looking for is some kindergarten funding for this statewide screener. So next week, during this UOD assessment directors meeting, I'll talk more to those that come to that meeting about the kindergarten assessment and what it looks like. I'll actually bring you some TAMs, and we'll talk about it. But without the funding, there's no way that this can go statewide. So we'll see what happens during the session. But just so you know that's on the docket. So one of the things that I really want to make sure that everybody understands is we talk about a transition in testing. Remember that this spring, 2017, everything remains the same. Every student will see the same SAGE tests. There will be math, science, ELA. It has 2 writing prompts. So that doesn't change this spring, okay? And you can see the approximate testing time based on your students. So just so you know, as you hear things going through the legislative session or you hear things about the new vendor, new RFP, remember that this spring is just exactly the same. And again, you know, Jared's already spoken to you, the ACT in the spring. Now, next year, we are negotiating for a contract extension because the way that the RFP is going, if we don't get a vendor in place till September or October, they really have a hard time getting a whole new assessment system ready because we have kids that actually take trimester tests and semester tests, and we won't be ready. So because of that, we are negotiating a contract extension with AIR. But it will look a little bit differently in 2018. In 2018, now remember that all of these have to do with, the changes here have to be legislatively mandated. So something could happen in the legislative session that this does not occur. So just make sure that you know that the changes that you see for the next 2 years do have to have legislative change. So this is what we anticipate will happen at the end of 2018. We're going to keep AIR and SAGE, but it will only be SAGE summative in 3 through 8. Okay?
This slide, the PowerPoint that you have is updated. This one is not because it's updated. So the 2018 where it says 1 writing prompt in 5 and 8, it's actually 1 writing prompt in 3 through 8. The change to go to 1 writing prompt in just 5 and 8 happens in 19. So this one is correct. The one that you got today, the updated one from Tori that she sent out this morning is the correct one. So it should be. Right.
That's right.
Can you repeat that in the mic?
It's 1 writing prompt in grades 3 through 8, and then it's not until 19 where it's just 5 and 8.
Yeah, so this slide is, and if you're looking at it online, was from yesterday, that Tori updated this morning. So remember in 2018, even though the slide says writing in grades 5 and 8, it's 1 writing prompt, but it would be all the grades. So it's going to be like the same, it'll be one of the same kinds of SAGE writing prompts that they have seen forever, but it will just be 1 instead of 2 for grades 3 through 8. Okay? So you may want to change that. We anticipate that the legislature will pass Aspire
for grades 9 and 10. Aspire has separate tests, so it has an English, a math, a reading, a science, and a writing piece to it. So the test time comes down a little bit, but not a lot. And the writing is really different in Aspire and in ACT, where students now have greater cognitive demands on them to read a passage, create an argument, and respond to that. The Aspire and ACT basically they kind of go back to the old DWA sort of format where it just gives you a prompt and the students write, and that's why it's shorter. So it's a different kind of writing.
There's a question online. Hang on, now they're all talking. So no formative or interim next year.
Oh, no, this is just for summative. I'm just talking about summative now. All of those same pieces of SAGE will still be available. So the formative, the benchmarks, everything we've rolled out this year is going to be available for the rest of this year, and will also be available for the rest of next year. Okay? So this slide is I'm just talking summative on this one, okay?
Okay.
Then in 2019 is when we'll have the new computer adaptive test. It could be that it looks a lot and smells a lot like SAGE. We don't know that at this point, so it just depends on who our new vendor is. It will be utilizing our item bank. So that's a really important point, is that the questions and the rigor that students have seen will still be included because Utah owns the writing, or they own the item bank. So, one of the things that we're demanding in our RFP is that people be able to use our items. So that will be the same. So it might look a little different, but it will still be the same content. It will again be math, science, ELA, and here's where we have the board's adopted to move to writing in grades 5 and 8 instead of every single grade. So again, during the legislative session, things can happen. I know that there's lots of people out there that feel really strongly on both sides of this issue. So I imagine there'll be quite a bit of robust discussion. And if your superintendents or your district has some feelings about this, I really encourage you to contact your legislators as we move through on this. The total testing time, again, in 3 through 4 and 6 through 7 would be the same. It'd be a little bit lower because they would just have the one prompt, and in 5 and 8, and the prompt would be 50 minutes. So we're actually going to have to shorten their reading and the time that they have to actually write. They want a shortened time span. Much of this is coming because we have lots of folks that feel that we have too much assessment. And so this is the way that the board decided that they would help that piece and shorten some of the assessment. Question?
Yeah, are they going to do the science testing starting in 3rd grade? Or is it continuing to be starting in 4th grade?
No, the same. Science.
Repeat the question.
Yes. So she was wondering if science was in 3rd grade, the way that this slide reads, but we just included all the subjects. So science remains the same, 4 through 8. Okay?
But then writing is only 5th.
The writing will only be 5th and 8th. Mm-hmm. And one of the ideas, too, is that we would still keep interim and benchmark writing at every grade level so that teachers, because it's part of the core in their standards, that you would still be able to use that on an LEA basis. So, that's our hope that we'd be able to do that. And then it would, again, be Aspire in 9th and 10th grade and 11th grade ACT statewide. Now, there is some talk because the legislation reads that it's the college's readiness assessment that's most commonly used, which for years and years and years has been ACT. However, now in the state of Utah, all of our local colleges and universities accept SAT just as readily as they accept ACT. So that may change the conversation. I'm not sure. Okay. Any questions about this plan? Yes.
So the writing test in 2018, where it's changing to one writing prompt, do we know if it's going to be argumentative or informational, or is it a catch-up?
Yeah, you don't know, we won't know, and it might be that we have, see where's Benson?
It'll be randomized.
Randomized.
So, at class of 3, some of your kids are going to get opinion, if you can demonstrate or argumentative or not.
Julie, come and say that into the microphone. Yeah, we're going to randomize it so that teachers still teach the broad standards.
So next year in 2018, when it goes down to one prompt for all grades, it'll be randomized. And so in a class, some of your kids are going to get opinion or argument, and some of them are going to get informative, and it'll just be randomized per student. So you won't know in advance, but in your class, you'll see both types of the assessment.
Okay, any other questions on our plan? Yes.
Yeah, you mentioned that this is coming because we spent a lot of time on assessment. I'm just curious if with the proposal for 2019, if we're intending to have a hard time limit or the same where all students should be completed.
You know, we've been, yeah.
For the writing, the board wants at a hard time of 50 minutes. It's a hard stop.
Right.
Every other subject.
Every other subject they're okay with having the same approximate time. It's just writing. They're really.
So then with accommodations, that's still the 2.5.
It would still be coming out. So the question is that 50 minutes going to be a hard stop in 2019? Right now, the way the board direction, and we have been directed from the board that they want writing as a hard stop in 50 minutes. That none of the other assessments they've talked about. So, you know, those will remain untimed unless we receive other direction. And then all the accommodations still apply. So, you know, time and a half is on the student side, you can make it time and a half. Absolutely. Okay. So right now, as the legislative session is starting, there's going to be some new legislation around accountability. And we're in beginning stages of this, so I just want to, I've talked about it in the last couple of meetings, sort of where we're going. And one of the main things on this slide, and this is so dense, and I completely apologize for how dense it is, but what this is actually showing you is right now we have PACE, we have Grading Utah Schools, and then we have ESSA, right, or ESEA, which is our federal accountability. So the biggest goal here is to bring all of these pieces together. And so what folks really want is one comprehensive accountability for the state of Utah. So thinking about these indicators, academic achievement will be SAGE and ACT, Aspire 9 and 10, and SAGE 3 through 8, and ACT in grade 11. So those are the academic tests or the indicators that we will be using. And then that is status, that's percent proficient. Against that and with that is the growth. So again, we'll be looking at student growth in SAGE, grades 3 through 8, 4 actually through 8, because you have to have 2 years to calculate growth. And what we typically have been used to, which is SGPs. I hope everybody knows about SGPs. We've talked about them for years. And then a growth in Aspire from 9 to 10, and then to ACT in 11. And then college and career readiness. So we've talked a lot about these indicators. They will be included. They haven't been included in the high school accountability, and I think this is a really positive move to include these because we don't really have I feel like an accurate or a full or complete picture of where high schools are right now. So this helps. Instead of the ACT benchmark where all kids had to meet all 4 benchmarks, what they're talking about now is ACT a composite score of 18, which is much more reasonable. Graduation is still there. And then we're going to have some point values or some credits for kids that have a CTE concentrator or a CTE pathway, IB, AP, and concurrent enrollment. So no matter which path the students take to be considered college or post-secondary readiness, is that they've had to have completed something in one of these 4 areas. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get a little further down the road in the legislative session. The other thing that's added to accountability that hasn't been there before is English language learner progress. And that'll be included for schools who have
10 or more English language learners. If you have fewer than 10, this will not be counted as part of your calculation. All right? And we'll talk a little bit more about this later on in the session, but it's going to be based on how WIDA defines their progress. So we'll give you some more information about that. They've come out with some new guidance about how many points it actually equals each year for students to be getting closer and closer to being English proficient. And then in the early grades, kindergarten readiness, we've talked about that as well. But this will probably be just reported on the report card. It won't be part of the accountability piece, but it'll be reported in advanced coursework. So these bottom two bullets, one of the things that we have talked about, and we talked about with our assessment and advice, assessment and accountability policy advisory committee, is that the first 5 of those will be included in accountability, but the others will be reported. And one of the things that we're going to do, and we'll talk about a little bit more about, is that for elementaries in grades 3 through 8, a DIBELS piece or an early readiness piece using DIBELS will be reported at the bottom of a report card. And for high schools, it would be the percentage of kids participating in advanced coursework. And then there's going to be another slot, and that slot will be for LEAs to choose. And you can choose it as an LEA or even as a school, something that you would want to report about your school. So there's lots of other indicators that we've talked about, but none of these indicators do we collect in a way that's systematic that we can actually use. So let's say your district or your school wants to look at chronic absenteeism. That's something that they can include in the report, but it wouldn't necessarily be in accountability. Or students participating in extracurricular activities, or school climate surveys. All of those kinds of things that we've talked about, we don't collect at the state in a way that's uniform for everybody, but it might be a real point, a real selling point, or a real something positive for your school that you may want to report. So as we get a little bit further down the road, we'll talk about how we're going to do that and how we're going to collect that data from you to report, but also just thinking about what else we want to report but don't want to be part of the calculation. Now, all of this could completely change as we go through this session, but right now, if we move to this, then it will meet the requirements of the SSA, and then if the state legislature signs off on it, we can actually bring all of these different accountability measures into one measure. Now, maybe something you're thinking about is what about the opt-out, right? That makes a big difference. And the way we count graduation is different in GUS, or Grading Utah Schools, than it is in the federal calculations. So there's still a couple of those big sort of elephants in the room when we think about accountability. So I imagine where we're going to get to at the end is that we're going to run accountability the same way. It will be the same report, but you'll probably get 2 ratings. You're going to get a federal rating because of the opt-out rules with the federal government and the federal 4-year graduation rate, and you'll probably get a state rating because in the state, we don't count opt-outs either in the numerator or the denominator of any of these calculations. So it's better, it's incrementally better, it's not going to be perfect, and probably what you'll see too is that for this 16-17 year, and you can go to the next slide, and I'll talk just a little bit about some of these really quickly. For this next year, it's going to remain the same, okay? So none of these changes will occur until 17-18. So as we go through the session, after the session is over, we have 120 days before any changes actually take place. And that puts us after accountability is released. So for that reason, all of this is delayed by 1 year. So just so that you know. So when we meet together as what we're calling APAC, we used to call it the PAC, now it's called the APAC, Assessment and Accountability Policy Advisory Committee, we are still trying to get a lot of public input
about what we're thinking about with accountability. And even though APAC weighs in on some things, and we have some ideas about what we feel would really be helpful for students and for schools and parents concerning accountability, you also have the Board of Education, our state board that weighs in, and they make some decisions. And then again, you also have the state legislature, the Education Interim Committee, who also weighs in. So there's lots of fingers in this pot. And so we don't know where things will actually end up at the end. So one of the things that we've really been thinking about is what is sufficient growth? Right now in our accountability system, any student that receives a 40 SGP or greater, it's a 1. They're counted, they made sufficient growth. Anybody below 40 is a 0, they didn't make enough growth. So that's a pretty crude measure. And so we've been thinking about some different ways to think about sufficient growth. And I'll show you with these in just a few minutes. Post-secondary readiness, advanced coursework, we asked the APAC to weigh in on that quite a bit, and their indicator values. And then this idea of what we call standard setting. This is something new that we're going to ask the legislature and the state board to allow us to participate in. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. So we've been used to be using the 40th SGP. And because it's such a crude measure, we wanted to make sure that we're really capturing the growth of all students. When you look at an AGP metric, which is a little bit different, we call this adequate growth percentile. So we can actually calculate and apply a scaled score to a student from one year to the next to say, wherever you are, if you're below proficient, what's your trajectory? Where do you need to be in 3 years to be proficient? So based on where you are, where do you need to be? Because if you're a student that's a really low-scoring student, or you have a really low-scoring student, if they just keep making 40 SGP, they're never going to catch up, right? So their trajectory is it needs to be steeper. Then you may also have students who are really high-scoring. They're like 4s already on everything. Well, a 40 SGP, because they're only being compared to other students who are also very high-scoring, a 40 SGP might be too high for these students, and they're still 4s. So we have a catch-up and keep-up kind of model that will actually give students a scale score to scale score what they need to have for proficiency. I will bring you some examples of that and what that looks like next month. It can also be used, I said that, catch up, keep up. So we thought this is really important to be able to use this AGP indicator. Now there is one problem with the AGP indicator, and that is that it mimics or it looks a lot like status or achievement. And when you're looking at an accountability system, you're looking at achievement and growth. You want those to measure 2 different things. One's achievement, one's growth. If you do use just the AGP, then that looks a lot like achievement, and you're not measuring things too differently, right? Because you're always looking to keep up or to catch up, and so you're looking toward proficiency. So that's why it looks really similar when you begin to run these models. So they suggested that the APAC, and this is what we're going to suggest as well, is that we provide all LEAs a student-by-student scale score to scale score. So you get a report that says this is where this student needs to be. So for reporting purposes, for teacher purposes, an AGP would be important to you. So we would like to report that. So that's going to be part of, we think it's going to be part of the accountability system. But for accountability, we discussed a matrix that we would like to use that sort of uses this AGP, but it also uses, go to the next slide, please. Okay, so it uses the student growth percentile, which we've always been used to using, and it also uses the student growth target, or the AGP. So AGP is adequate growth percentile. People have a hard time kind of thinking about that word and what it actually means. And so we're actually going to start to call them SGTs
instead of AGPs, okay? So that's a little shift in the acronym, but we think people will be able to get a handle on it because really what it is a student growth target. So using these student growth targets and using their student growth percentile, we can actually give some points. Now, we're not exactly sure how this plays out yet, right? Because right now, our technical advisory can help people, which are the Center for Assessment back east, and our data and statistics team, they're actually running this data, impact data, and some models to see what this would actually look like. But this has a lot of promise. And what it would do is, if you scored really high on an SGP and you scored really high on your target, you might get full amount of points. But let's say you did very low on your student growth percentile, you were down in the 20s or something like that. So even though you made your student growth target, you wouldn't necessarily get the full amount of points. So this looks a little bit like, how many of you remember, well, there's a few old folks in the room, besides myself, the old progress tables. How many of you remember progress tables? Okay. So really what this is a progress table with using SGPs and the student growth targets. So something like this is much more sensitive to how students are growing and how they're actually progressing. And we would use this in the accountability model, but then we would report to you both the SGPs for the kids and we would report those student growth targets. One of the problems with just the SGPs is it's really hard for a teacher to say, oh, Julie had a 40 SGP and she needs to have a 42 SGP next year. How do I operationalize that as a teacher? What do I need to do to get from a 40 to a 42? You know, you don't really know, but if you can see where a student is and they had a report that came out with the trajectory of where they needed to be in the next 3 years, that might be more helpful for teachers. So that's one of the things that we're going to try to build into the legislation is being able to report that and then use something like this as a matrix. So I haven't just confused the heck out of you. I hope that this comes together in a way that's more equitable for schools than what we have now. So for 2017, you're not going to see a lot of change. And then, is that the end one? Is there another one about that? Right, so go back to this one right before. I wanted to talk to you. No, one more. Where was that I wanted to talk to you about? No, is there another? Yeah, go one more back. Okay. I want to talk to you a little bit about standards then. So, you know, there's been a lot of talk, and I think it will stay currently in the law the way it is with so many points make an A, another number of points get a B, a C. And last year, how many of you were in a district where a school made an A, but because we have 65% of schools across the state that made an A, they bumped up 5 points and retroactively applied that, and so some schools that had an A now had a B. How many of you did that happen to? Yeah. So, you know, what makes an A school? What makes a B school? Is it really just a specific amount of points? So that's pretty arbitrary. And I believe that lots of people are getting around the fact that there's not a lot of difference. And we're just drawing these little lines in the sand saying this is an A school, this is a B school, this is a C school. So one of the ideas, and what we're trying to get our legislators and our board around, is this idea of standard setting. We go through a standard setting process and assessment, right? How many of you have ever been in those groups where you actually come to the state office and we work around the data and look and see where we set the standards for what the difference between a 1 and a 2 is, and a 2 and a 3 and a 3 and a 4? That's all done by people. That's all done by teachers. And some of you may have been involved in that. And what we would like to do is bring together a big group of you and do the same kind of process, but instead of it around an assessment, we're actually going to do it around the points and the whole accountability system. And so we may say, you know, whatever Angela thinks is an A school, we're going to bring what her ideas are, and then what Rob thinks is an A school, you know, and then what Clyde thinks is an A school. And some of those opinions may differ, right? But we're going to get to that point through some open dialogue about what an A school really looks like and the number of points that should be applied to that. And we feel like if we can go through this process, And it would be happening sometime this summer, a little bit later this fall. And if you're interested and want to be a part of that, please let me know. We would like a large group of stakeholders. We think it'll be much more accurate and it'll be much more defensible. And then, if the legislature agrees with the process that we've done, we can set those standards and then keep them for 5 or 6 years without this constant moving target, right? And then it would be more of a criterion-based. You know, a school knows, everybody in the state knows what it's going to take to get an A. And we're not bumping that up every year. Because right now with the moving target, everything's just more normative. And we want to change that to be more criterion referenced. So, and if we're allowed to do that, that process will take place this summer with that standard setting. So that's a big deal, and we hope that that will really get us into place. Now, once that's done, we can take all of the other point values and all of those other things that are in grading Utah schools right now, we can take it out, and the process will be much better, and hopefully a better accountability system. So that's where we are right now with accountability. And things could change, and they probably will. But I just want to give you a heads up as we start into the legislative session, this is the direction that we think that we're heading. Okay? And you might see some other education bills. I've heard rumor that there's other education bills that want to get totally away from grades altogether and get rid of grading Utah schools. So there's going to be some competing interests out there, and probably need to be thinking about that as we go through this session. And March 9th can't come soon enough. It'll be done. And by the time we talk next time, I'm sure that there'll be a lot more information that I'll be able to give you. So one of the things that we've been thinking about, speaking about next time before I let you go today, is that we've been meeting every single month. And sometimes we cancel the meetings, and sometimes we don't, or sometimes we have them by webinar. So I'd like to put it out there to you. So from here forward, for the next 6 months, is that we don't meet every month. We either have just an online webinar or an in-person meeting. So for February, it would be an online, just online, and then March we would come back and meet together, so that we're not doing it every single month and asking all of you to come from long distances in bad weather, and that we do, and sometimes we just have straight information to give you. Today we got through pretty quickly, giving you a bunch of information really quickly. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. But how many of you would be in favor of that instead of, any nays in the room? Anybody want to meet every single month? Tori, did you get that? Okay.
We've canceled enough meetings in the past that we have by default really been meeting every other month anyway.
Right, and so we just sort of want to go, we've been talking about that, and so we wanted to put it out there officially, because that's sort of what's happened over the last little while. You know, when we very first launched Sage, and there was so much information, we really felt it was critical to meet every month, and there was so much going on. But now that it's slowed down a little bit, and will be for the next, this spring and next spring, we really think we can back off on the meetings we have. But we want to make sure that we're also providing you the services that you need and that you can get the help that you need. And so, you know, if you're having any issues with anything in your districts with assessment, we want to make sure that we're here and available to help you. So, okay. Yes, question.
Yeah, I have a question about the grading. Do you know if there's going to be any change? Like, for our school, we're a K-12 school, but because we didn't have 10 graduates, they didn't grade our high school at all. Is that going to be the same for this? That they did that retroactively during the summertime? Is that the same thing this year, or is that going to be addressed? Or?
So she's asking if their 12th grade has fewer than 10 students, do they not get a grade for their high school? And according to the FERPA laws, anything that's under 10 and inside of 10, like we talked about English learners and all that, we won't produce anything under 10, because then you could identify, you know, student identifiable. So anything that's less than 10 is pretty much the lowest that we go. And you could ask them, actually, I mean, you could contact the data and statistics team and say, if we did have 10 graduates, you know, maybe you get some information, but it would not be public. Anything that's less than 10 is not public. No, because of the few without graduation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the same. Okay, any other questions? All right, well, thank you so much, and you're getting out of here a few minutes early. Hope the roads aren't as bad as they were coming in. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Joellen?
Yes, question.
There is a quick question on it. It says Aspire online all at once, one sitting, or split up by subjects.
Oh, Aspire is online, and I do think, no, I think it's all in one thing. I think so. I'll have to check that out.
Oh.
We'll let them know in the next meeting. Okay, so we'll get more information. Yeah, you can, they're all there, just like ACT. So, okay.
Give it for an hour or two.